drunk,
Drunk. Having drunk so much alcohol that it is impossible to think or speak clearly. For example, they were clearly too drunk to drive.
Dub. To give somebody something a particular name, often in a humorous or critical way. For example, the media dubbed anorexia the slimming disease.
Due. Caused by somebody is something, because of somebody is something. For example, the team's success was largely due to her efforts.
Dust. A fine powder that consists of very small pieces of sand, earth, etc. For example, a cloud of dust rose as the truck drove off.
Duty. Something that you feel you have to do because it is your moral or legal responsibility. For example, duty to do something.
E. Either of the organs on the sides of the head that you hear with. For example, the left-right ear.
Early. Near the beginning of a period of time, an event, etc. For example, the early morning. Early. Near the beginning of a period of time, an event, etc. For example, the early morning. Earn. To get money for work that you do. For example, earn something. Earnings. The money that you earn for the work that you do. For example, a rise in average earnings.
earthquake,
Earthquake. A sudden, violent shaking of the Earth's surface. For example, a devastating, a massive, a powerful earthquake.
Echo. The reflecting of sound off a wall or inside a particular space so that a noise appears to be repeated, a sound that is reflected back in this way. For example, there was an echo on the phone and I couldn't hear clearly.
Exclusion. The act of preventing somebody/something from entering a place or taking part in something. For example, exclusion of somebody/something from something.
Excuse.
Excuse. A reason, either true or invented, that you give to explain or defend your behavior. For example, late again. What's your excuse this time?
execute,
Execute. To kill somebody, especially as a legal punishment. For example, be executed for something.
Execution. The act of killing somebody, especially as a legal punishment. For example, he faced execution by hanging for murder.
Exert. To use power or influence to affect somebody/something. For example, he exerted all his authority to make them accept the plan.
Expect. To think or believe that something will happen or that somebody will do something. For example, expect something.
Expire. To be no longer legally acceptable because the period of time for which it could be used has ended. For example, when does your driving license expire? Explain. To tell somebody about something in a way that makes it easy to understand. For example, explain something.
Explicit. Clear and easy to understand, so that you have no doubt what is meant. For example, he gave me very explicit directions on how to get there.
Explicitly. Clearly or directly, so that the meaning is easy to understand. For example, the report states explicitly that the system was to blame. Exposure. the state of being in a place or situation where there is no protection from something harmful or unpleasant. For example, prolonged exposure to harmful radiation.
External.
External. Connected with or located on the outside of something/somebody. For example, the external walls of the building.
Extremist. A person whose opinions, especially about religion or politics, are extreme, and who may do things that are violent or illegal for what they believe. For example, left-wing or right-wing political or religious extremists.
Eye. Either of the two organs on the face that you see with. For example, the suspect has dark hair and green eyes.
Face. The front part of the head, where the eyes, nose, and mouth are. For example, a pretty or pale or round face. Face. The front part of the head, where the eyes, nose, and mouth are. For example, a pretty or pale or round face.
Faith. Trust in somebody's ability or knowledge, trust that something will do what has been promised. For example, if the company can retain its customers' faith.
Fake. Not what somebody claims it is, appearing to be something it is not. For example, there were a few stalls selling fake designer clothing.
Familiar. Well known to you, often seen or heard and therefore easy to recognize. For example, to look/sound/seem familiar. Fan. A person who admires something or enjoys watching or listening to something very much. For example, sports or music fans. Farm. An area of land, and the buildings on it, used for growing crops and or keeping animals. For example, a 200-hectare farm. Farm. An area of land, and the buildings on it, used for growing crops and or keeping animals. For example, a 200-hectare farm.
Farmer.
Farmer. A person who owns or manages a farm. For example, my parents are dairy farmers.
Fate. The things, especially bad things, that will happen or have happened to somebody or something. For example, the fate of the 3 men is unknown.